Welcome to the Explainer. All right, today we're going to skip past the usual headlines about students using ChatGPT to cheat. We're diving into something way, way deeper. How AI is quietly becoming the invisible infrastructure of our entire education system.
So when you hear AI in the classroom, what do you picture? You might be thinking, is this really anything new? Isn't it just, a smarter calculator, a fancy new tool for getting homework done?
But the reality is so much bigger than that. What we're seeing is that AI isn't just another tool, it's actually becoming our cognitive infrastructure.
So what on earth does that mean? Well, think of it like the roads and bridges for our minds. These are the huge, foundational AI systems that are starting to shape what we're able to know, how we make decisions, and even what our brains flag as important or relevant. And this quote from the research really nails it. It says these systems automate relevance judgment and shift epistemic agency to non-human systems. Okay, in plain English, it means the power to decide what knowledge is important is actually shifting away from us and over to the algorithm.
So, how does this powerful new infrastructure actually work under the hood? Well, it all comes down to something called the probabilistic engine. At its heart, a large language model, or an LLM, isn't thinking the way we do. It's a prediction machine. It's been fed a colossal amount of text from the internet, and its main job, its only job really, is to calculate the most probable next word in a sentence. It chops our language up into little units called tokens and just runs them through this massive web of connections to make its best guess.
And to get a sense of the scale we're dealing with, just look at the numbers. GPT-3.5, for instance, runs on 175 billion parameters. Now those parameters, you can think of them as the little knobs and dials the model uses to make its predictions. It's a mind-bogglingly complex system.
But then, get this. Look at the jump to its successor, GPT-4. We're suddenly talking about an estimated 1.76 trillion parameters.
And the crucial thing to get here is that this isn't just a small step up. It's a massive, massive leap in scale, and that directly translates to more power and way more capability. So we have this incredibly powerful technology being built, which of course leads us to a classic conflict, the promise versus the peril of this new infrastructure.
And this chart really lays out the two sides of the coin, doesn't it? On the one hand, the promise is huge, right? We're talking truly personalized learning for every single student, getting instant feedback and freeing up learners to focus on bigger, more creative ideas. But then you have the other side, the peril, and it's just as real. Students could become cognitively dependent on these tools. Some studies are already showing reduced brain activity when we offload thinking. And of course, there's the risk of losing independent learning skills, not to mention all the massive concerns around data privacy and built-in bias.
So, how do we get all that promise without falling headfirst into the peril? Well, the research we're looking at proposes a kind of blueprint, a framework for doing this responsibly.
It's a 5-layer framework designed to make us think about AI not just as a product, but as an entire system. You've got the data environment, the probabilistic engine, then cognitive scaffolding, human oversight, and finally, tying it all together, governance and ethics. So let's break that down.
Okay, so the first 2 layers are the foundation, the bedrock. Layer 1 is the data environment. That's all the information just pouring in from learning platforms. And layer 2 is that probabilistic engine we just talked about, the core AI that's crunching all that data.
Now, layer 3 is where it gets really interesting for students. It's called cognitive scaffolding. This is how the AI actually interacts with the learner, giving them feedback, explaining things. It's like a helping hand. But this is also where the biggest risk is, the risk of students relying on it too much and only engaging with the material on a really shallow level.
So what's the solution here? Well, it all comes down to finding a critical balance. The idea is to automate the routine, tedious stuff while fiercely protecting the kinds of tasks that force students to really grapple with deep, conceptual ideas on their own.
And this brings us to what the framework argues are the 2 most critical layers of all, the ones that are all about keeping humans in the driver's seat.
Layer 4 is human oversight. And let's get clear, this is completely non-negotiable. Educators have to be the ones deciding what to hand over to an AI. They need to be there to interpret the AI's output and guide the actual learning process. The best model seems to be a hybrid one. Let the AI handle routine grading so that teachers can focus on the complex, nuanced evaluation that only a human can do.
And a huge piece of this oversight puzzle is AI literacy. It is not enough to just know how to use the tool. Both teachers and students absolutely have to understand how it works, what its blind spots are, and where its built-in biases actually come from.
Finally, Layer 5 wraps this whole thing in governance and ethics, and this has to happen at every single level. At the micro level, we're talking about individual students and teachers using these tools responsibly. At the meso level, it's about schools and universities setting clear policies on privacy and bias. And at the macro level, it's international bodies like the World Health Organization stepping in and calling for real regulation and audits.
But here is the most crucial point about all this. Governance can't be some static policy document that you write once and then stick in a drawer. It has to be a living, breathing system, one that's dynamic, constantly being updated, and above all else, one that is always centered around human well-being and human decision-making.
Which leaves us with this final thought. AI is, without a doubt, building the new infrastructures of knowledge, the roads, the bridges, the power grids for how we're all going to learn and think in the future. And so the question we have to answer is this: who do we trust to draw the map?